Okay, so this is if you want a little bit of a challenge, a little bit of an extension. So we want to look at where the function is increasing, decreasing, where y is greater than 0 and y is less than 0. So increasing, we're always looking at when we're reading the graph from left to right. So where is the graph increasing? It's when it's going up. And so if I trace it, it's going up here and down here. So it's increasing in this portion, okay, in this interval. So we're going to write it in set notation. It's just to prepare us for some other challenging problem. So it's increasing or going up in this section. So that is when our x values, so these are always with respect to our x values. Okay, so we're looking at our x-axis. So that is when x is between -1 here and +1. So it's increasing in this interval between -1 and 1. It's decreasing, going down this portion here and this portion here. So that is when, let's look at our x values of when that's happening. So for our x value, we can see that it's when it's less than, x is less than -1. And then also, when x is on this side, when x is greater than +1. Then when is y greater than 0, really what we're looking at is when is it above the x-axis here. So it's above the x-axis at this point, right in here. So that is when, here to here, and so this is when x is less than, and we'll call this, let's see, -1.5 or -3/2. So when x is less than -3/2, it's above the x-axis. Then it's below everywhere else. Now at one point right in here, that's when it is actually on the x-axis, so it's not below or above. And so we'll actually have to kind of exclude that point. And so what we can do is just write it like this. So it is below the x-axis from this -3/2 to this 1 right here. So x is between -3/2 and +1. Then you have to go beyond that, so when x is greater than 1. So it's a little challenging or a lot challenging, just depending where you are. Now, this, again, we're looking at our x values of when these characteristics are. So if you want, you can try that for this example here. Now this is to prepare us to be able to sketch a graph given these characteristics. So that's what this is preparing us for. So try this one out. All right, if you try this out, it's increasing at these spots here, so I matched it with the colors. It's going up in these two spots. Again, you're tracing it, and you're seeing where the graph is going up at those points. So you see it's here in this interval. That is when x is between -1 and 0. Okay, so these points are with respect to the x-axis. Then it's increasing, starting at this point, when x is greater than 2. Then it's decreasing in the pink spots, right in here. So here it's from -∞, so we can say that x, it's decreasing when x is less than -1. All those points before -1, it's decreasing. Then it's also decreasing in this interval between x is 0 and 2. So x is between 0 and 2. Now when is it greater than 0? When it's positive, so it's at two spots, one here and one here. So it's greater than 0, so looking at the x values, when x is less than +1. And then again, when x is, to the right, greater than 4. So notice that these points are our x-intercepts. Then here, when it's below, it's here at this one spot in this one interval. So that is when x is between +1 and 4. So here, notice this 1 and 4 and 1 and 4, we use that all. Now to go a step further, now that we have that information, let's try and sketch a graph. So f is increasing when x is less than 0 and greater than 4. Increasing means that it's going up. So increasing when x is less than 0, so here is our 0, so I know it's increasing here. And then when x is greater than 4, so here, I'm just going to draw these, 4, it's going to go up. Then f is decreasing meaning it's going down between 0 and 4, so that makes sense. So it's going down here. So just to kind of get a general sketch, this is what I'm doing. Then, when is the y values greater than 0? Y is greater than 0, so it's above the x-axis. It says between -2 and 3 and 5. So what I'm going to do is those are our x-intercepts. And then I'll figure out where I'm coming from there. So -2, +3, and at +5, right here. Okay? So those are the spots. So that's when it's above the x-axis, and then when it's below, it's the other interval. So if I know some of this already, so I know this is my y-intercept, I know it's increasing in this interval here, then it's going up and it hits the x-axis at this point, and at this point here it kind of changes directions at the 0, somewhere in there. And then it decreases, because we know it decreases, it hits this point up until somewhere in here and then goes back up. Okay, so let's see. So when is it below the x-axis? That's when x is less than -2. This is definitely below. And when x is between 3 and 5, that is definitely below. So now that we've done this graph, I know it's pretty challenging. This is. We can tell if the degree is even or odd. So the directions of the ends are going opposite directions, so therefore we know it's odd. And the leading coefficient, since it's going up on the right, we know that it's positive. So try this example here. It might be helpful to start with your y-intercepts here. X-intercepts here. So notice the same exact numbers above and below. So you can put your x-intercepts. Then maybe where these points are here, the 1/2 and the 2.5, maybe draw like a vertical line to kind of tell you where the increasing and decreasing stops, just kind of as a hint. Try it out. All right, so see if you got this graph. Something similar to this. So I started with my x-intercepts. So I drew that at -3, 1, and 4. So I know that's where it changes, where it hits the x-axis, so that's a good starting point. Then I drew vertical lines here at -1/2. X is -1/2, so -1/2 is here. And then at 2.5, that's where I know where my turning points are. So it decreases, so it's going down when x is less than -1/2. So I started to draw something here. It's going down, and I pass through this point here, and I know it's going to change direction somewhere in here. It's also decreasing when x is greater than 2.5. So then I know that it's going to go down in this center here. Then it increases between those 2 points. So I'm just going to connect the dots from the green to the green, here to here. Then I just double checked. Is my y values greater than 0 in these points? So when x is less than -3, yes, it is above. Less than -3 is here. And when x is between 1 and 4, that is also above the x-axis. So that is true. Then I checked here. When is it less than 0? So x is between -3 and 1. So here's -3 and 1. Yes, it is below. And x is greater than 4. Yes, it is below. So that's a good sketch. So now the degree of this is odd again. Oops, odd. And then the leading coefficient, because it's going down on the right, up on the left, it is negative. So if you'd like, you can try out number 37 on the homework. Big ideas, look in your textbook, and that would be a good extension. And then even if you wanted to, you could also do number 39. It's odd, and so you can check the answers at the back of the book. So try it out. If you are really, wanting a little bit of a challenge, that would be good to try out, but not necessary, not required.